So this is not going to be about like KPIs and whatever. And maybe sometimes a KPI will pop up, but it's not going to be about that. It's more about like leadership and really, to be a successful leader, CEO, whatever you want to, we have to have all the pieces, right? Mind, body, soul, everything has to kind of be together. So yes, there will be things about business. Sometimes there'll be automotive, whatever, but it's not going to be just like KPIs. For example, yesterday I had Lee and Kelly Weatherby, them, I think, from Accurate.
Yeah.
And one of the things they talked about was their marriage and working together and the problems it caused. And they actually had to go to a marriage counselor because they didn't think they were going to come through. And they said, what a shame, 36 years.
Oh my God,
raising the kids, the business. Now they're over the hump, ready to retire soon, and they can't stand each other, right? Because of all the. So I thought it was so brave of them to talk about that, and that they didn't have the tools any longer, the two of them, to work on it. So they went to a counselor, and things are great. But they said it's a lot of hard work, and you have to choose to be married, and you have to, and I thought, this is wonderful. And these are some of the things we don't talk about, right, on a lot of, just in general, the automotive, and, a lot of macho guys, and, we don't talk about feelings. We don't talk about, here's some of the things that can go sideways, and here's how we get through it. And so I really liked it. So I think I'm kind of open to anything. I'm open to anything and whatever comes up, to be sort of, I guess, to use the word organic, that's absolutely overused. But I want people to understand their people, and not just a business leader, and not just that. And so they have to make mind shifts everywhere, I guess, basically. And I don't quite know how to articulate that. You have to not only make a shift for thinking like a CEO, instead of I'm a tech now that owns a shop, or I'm a baker that owns a bakery, but how do I make a shift to be a better father, a better mother, a better friend, a better, all of that. So,
wow, what an assignment.
Well,
it's a passion of mine, as it is with, I think, with most people, to grow oneself. And the sad part about it is how many of us don't do it actively, right? We do it passively in a reactive way. And then we wonder why relationships at work mimic the relationships at home. And so what I have to say for whoever's going to be hearing this from this point on is, I say this as a person who benefited immensely from the relationship that I had with ATI, as I had with other coaching companies. So all I have to say involves about 30 years of industry information, that much of which I could have taken more advantage of. So if I can somehow help somebody in some way or shape or fashion, that would make this next half hour worthy of their time. So with that said, I once said, I think it was at an ATI conference, I think that was the one in Tucson, and that is that the relationship and every relationship, you only have to answer two questions: where am I going, and who's coming with me? And if we mix those up, then we find ourselves being married to somebody either at home or at work that we blame them for, how did you tricked me into this, right?
I got duped.
I can't believe you brush your teeth this way instead of this way. I can't be with you anymore. And can you stop that annoying sound? What is that? You're breathing. It's so repetitive, right? And I'm exaggerating and trying to be funny, but these things start to gnaw on us. And I've come to realize that those people that annoy the hell out of us are the people that are there they're coming for us. I've got a young man, Casey, who came into my life as an 18-year-old, and my brother and I are partners. And so he's been in and out, but for the most part, he's been employed with us. And so one of the situations is that sometimes he'll do things that only like a son can do. So it's somewhere between him being a younger brother and my son is where where this relationship part. And so sometimes he'll cross the line. And how many people can you say this about? Like in 20 years plus, I've tried to fire him, and he says, no, I'm not going to go. And he doesn't do this like out of disrespect. He's like, no, I'm not going to go because I know you're going to come back down to earth from your craziness right now. And I said this 1,000 times before. There's dozens of times where I should have been fired by my employees. And likewise, I should have fired them. And somehow, by God's grace, we've managed to get past all of this stuff and make this relationship a lifetime relationship, one that is worth their worst day in my sanity, and one that is worth their best day in my, during my worst moments. And I think that is what a healthy marriage looks like. I mean, my wife and I had to go to couples counseling at some point, because whether it's in your 7th year or 17th year, you come across a situation, you're like, I don't know if I can live with the restrictions placed upon me, that we place on each other, right? Whatever it might be. And in my case, I'm a workaholic. I'm addicted to this industry and what I do for a living, and I get enormous value from that. And as I get enormous value from my home life, the problem is it's out of balance. So that's my challenge. And I tried to justify it for years by saying, well, look, I don't smoke, I don't drink, I don't gamble, I don't mess around, I don't have a side hustle, I don't do any of these things. All I have is a 50 to 60 hour work week, and I just can't get enough of it, right? So that as if somehow that is less destructive. You look at across our industry, right? What is the divorce rate among our industry? It's got to be higher than the nation's average, right? It's a complicated business, right? During our emails, right? What did I mention here? We happen to service the most complicated consumer product man has ever created, and we happen to employ and serve customers the most complicated machine that God has ever created. You put those two together, it's a miracle. I mean, it's a miracle that our businesses can thrive the way they have. So if you're a young shop owner and you're listening to this and you're having some trouble, what do you do? Well, for one, you get some coaching and you listen to a Kim Hickey, or you listen to a Mike Haley. Mike said something to me a few years ago. Oh my God, did he ever put me on my butt? He said, Bill, when was the last time you took a vacation that wasn't industry related? And I couldn't answer it because I was ashamed. What are you going to say to somebody when the answer is, I haven't taken a personal one. They've all been excuses.
And you're probably thinking you're doing a great big deal for your wife. Like, honey, come with me to
we're going
San Antonio for this conference.
Guess what?
All expenses paid. You get to come with me and join me.
So that was a wake-up call. But I would tell you, Mr. Young or even old shop owner, is surround yourself with people that you can trust, that are willing to go to the distance with you. And to the extent that you do that, to the extent that you prepare your life in a way that would understand, where you understand that life is a contextual framework. In other words, if I have boundary problems, right? If I have boundary problems at home, maybe I work excessive hours and I've got a crazy spending wife, or it's vice versa, right? Somebody clearly isn't checking with each other and money could be an issue, right? That's grounds for a divorce, right? Fully justified. That's not even anything to be sad about. Whoever is outspending the others, the household income, it's insanity. Dave Ramsey talks about that stuff all the time. When somebody calls in and he says, I've got this one guy had called up years ago. I remember this. And this guy calls up, he says, Dave, I love my wife. We have a great relationship and all this other stuff. And Dave, as he normally is like, just cut the crap. Tell me what's going on. Right. He says, well, my issue is my wife likes to have a lot of credit cards in her wallet. And he says, get a marriage counselor. He says, well, no, you got to listen to the rest of it. He says, well, my problem is I come home and she'll have bought $4,000 worth of furniture, and it's not the stuff that I like. And then he goes, get a marriage counselor. And then he says the third time, and finally Dave says to him, he says, you're not listening to me, are you? He goes, what do you mean? He says, you don't have a financial problem. You have a relationship problem. And the relationship is your marriage is going to, you have boundary issues. You clearly had not agreed on things that are important to you. And I take that and I think to myself, so where does that apply at work? So in my case, I've been fortunate enough to have 3 technicians with me that have been together for over 10 years. And it's like, I haven't lost anybody. Even throughout the pandemic, we didn't lose anybody. And I think the reason that happened is after 15 years of doing this, I finally got into my head is if I'm going to hire people, I can't hire the most technically gifted person. I've got to hire people that represent what I represent, that see the world through how I see it. And so I identify as a father who is a provider and a protector, right? And so what that means is that if I find men that are responsible, that are fathers that have families, lo and behold, they obviously I present the example as a business owner. I show up to work and I put in an honest to goodness day. I'm an active owner. And so that is what shows up for me. Now, sometimes it's a situation where life can present you with the opposite because it doesn't think that you're actually serious about what you're actually doing. So what does that look like? Well, if I say, for example, I'm an honest business owner, and yet I'm complaining about all these dishonest people coming in, maybe there's bad checks being whatever, or people ripping me off and all this other stuff. The issue isn't that I haven't learned my lesson about honesty. The issue is that clearly I think that I need this experience. Otherwise it wouldn't be showing up in my life.
Like, let me interrupt you for one moment, because you are a self-confessed workaholic. You're addicted to work and the business that you've grown for there. And so how do you, many people are, right, that are business owners, they thrive on being there. That's what keeps them going. So when you're mentoring your team and you're finding people with similar beliefs and you want to be a good mentor and example for them, how do you handle with that? Like, don't do as I do. Like, I'm a workaholic. I want to be here 60 hours a week, but I want you to take time off, have quality time, have good work balance, spend time with your family, but I don't do it. So don't look at me. How do you?
God, do I ever have a perfect example for you? So September of last year was the first time in 30 years plus that we started closing Saturdays. And how many shop owners do I know? I've got hundreds of them, right? 99% of them say, are you stupid? Close on Saturdays. You'll be more productive. Okay. Trust me. It'll be easier to keep people. So I throw up this weather balloon. I say to the guys, I think we're going to start closing Saturdays and Sundays. We have to have a 2-day work week. And the reason for that is because my A tech and my B tech both are young fathers with 2 kids at home and a wife. And I said, I'm not going to have you guys repeat what I had to repeat. How I fit in Boy Scouts and volleyball, all the travel stuff that we ended up doing. How we even ended up doing that, I don't know. But I'm certainly not going to allow that to happen. I'm not going to risk you guys having to repeat that. So we're going to start closing Saturdays and Sundays. And they fought me tooth and nail. Oh my God, we're going to lose business and we're not going to be as productive and all this other stuff. And lo and behold, here we are. We're a 5-day work week, and I still have to get used to it now, to have a 2-day weekend where the phones aren't ringing and there's nothing going on that has to be attended to, work related. It's a wonderful, wonderful thing. And if you're a shop owner, and if this is your issue, if you have guys that are workaholics like you are, you've got to dial it down. If you can't do it for yourself, I couldn't do it for myself. But I saw them repeating what I had done. And that was a price too high for me to see that happen again, and by God's grace, it wasn't anything catastrophic. It didn't have to cost me a relationship, whether it was a spouse or children. involved. Somehow I managed to get through this extremely hectic pace over the last 25 years, 30 years, without it really costing me too much at that point. So if you're hearing this as a shop owner, please don't. It's if you can't run a business in a 50-hour work week, there's something else going on.
Right. And
That.
that's many businesses, right? Not just
Yeah.
shops. I mean, you have to understand. And in today's world, people care much more about balance, work, home, home life, spending time with family than they do about anything else. I mean, we've done study after study, survey after survey, and this is not the days anymore where you go to work, you plug in your 60 hours, you tell your kids, don't dare call. I remember, my gosh, if I would have called my mom at work when I was growing up, I better be missing a limb or, in the emergency room, because you did not bother your parents at work, right? Like that was, holy cow, the whooping you would have got when they got home. Right, for bothering them at work. And now kids call all day, with cell phones, whatever, with people want access to their families. And people, some business owners are not making that shift in understanding. And this is a better way, right? We have to open our minds and hearts and understand this is a better way, because if we have internal customers that are happy at home and have a healthy home life, good relationships with their significant others, their children, with their friends, they're going to be much better internal customers, right? They're going to be much better employees, much more productive and happy. And we have to be part of that. We have to give them that permission to be with their family and put their family first, right? Instead of the old way that we used to do it. So you said you're still adjusting to Saturday and Sundays, no phone calls. You don't know what to do it yourself. So there becomes almost an identity crisis, right? When you are the business and that is the center kind of your universe, and that's what you are 7 days a week, you eat, breathe, sleep in, then all of a sudden, that's not what you are every day. You have to start realizing the business is not who I am, right? It's part of what I do, but it's not who I am. So how do you make that shift? Because that's huge for a lot of entrepreneurs and business owners is to, how do you live like that?
Yeah. Great question. So when you were saying that, I go back to the word balance. I think to myself, like the reason that I think what has sustained me over the years is because I live and breathe service. And I know it sounds cliche, but I get so much back. Like I had a customer of ours, I was having one of those bad days that we all have a while back, a couple of years ago, 2 or 3 years ago. And this customer comes in the door and I said, how are you doing today? And she says, I'm doing okay, considering everything. And I'm one to, I'll have a follow-up. So as I'm writing her up, I said, what's going on? She says, well, I was in the shower. This lady's 78 years old. I was in the shower, smelled smoke. The smoke alarm went off. And I had to run out of the shower, grab my husband, her husband's is sort of bedridden, 78 years old, walks out with a condo that's burning. So the condo's on fire, walks out and manages to get her wallet, her cell phone and her husband. Everything else is gone.
Oh my gosh.
And I thought to myself, now, isn't this interesting here? I'm thinking I'm having a bad day. And this person shows up here. What is this all about? Is it seriously an accident? You really think this is just a coincidence? Or do you think this is God Almighty himself, if you believe it? Or if not, if you don't believe in God, the universe, right? You don't think the universe is going to send you somebody who's going to smack you upside the head and say, wake up, dummy. Consider what a really bad day looks like, right? And we see this shop owners all the time. Somebody had, somebody pass away in their business, or something seriously much bigger than your little world. So not that it's not significant. Things matter, right? It was having a legitimately bad day. But sometimes being connected to other shop owners, being in the stream, whether you're in a coaching company, being able to call somebody, whether it's your coach or what have you, and saying, This is what's going on right now. It's not finances. It's all of it at the same damn time. All of it is happening at the same time. And I don't know if I want to be in business today. And I don't want to just sell it right now. And what does a smart coach like you say? Breathe a little bit. Okay. Take a week. Let's investigate. Let's see if that's truly what you want to do. Let's talk about it. And then you investigate and you find out a week later, it wasn't that. So you weren't absolutely sure that you wanted to get a divorce. You're sure that you didn't want to jump off the bridge. You're sure you didn't want to sell the business. It wasn't the end of the world. It's like we're grown human beings and that we act like 16-year-olds in high school after the first breakup. And sometimes we tend to overreact. So maybe having a friend network, a trusted partnership with somebody at home or at work where guys carry each other, where you know each other's personality, when somebody's having a bad day, what that looks like. And I mean, I've been pretty forthright, but I can tell you from personal experience, I've got some of the most amazing human beings in my life at work. They wouldn't be there had I not had the grace to dig a little deeper to find out what qualities lie underneath there, because the qualities that lie underneath there are what I need. That's my oxygen. That's what brings me to work. And I'm a little disappointed sometimes when people say, well, successful shop owners, you got to have 4 of these things, and then you got to be on a boat in Florida enjoying your life. Well, that's part of it. There's nothing wrong with it. And I would like some of that. But what about the part that you're a shop owner, you genuinely enjoy what you're doing, right? Why not a little bit of balance? So work less than 50 hours, put in 30 hours and shake hands and kiss babies and remind yourself along with your team why it is that we do what we do for a living, that we're in the service business. I know it's auto service and I know it's complicated and it can be difficult and all that, but it's still service. And it's not, let's not make it more complicated than it needs to be, because we can get overwhelmed pretty quickly when we look at all the things that a shop owner has to do and be, and some of us don't have that in our repertoire, right? You know me from the fact that I'm not a numbers guy, right? I'm a relationship guy. And forever and a day, I've pushed numbers away until it became a little bit more, until I could put some color on it, until I could see sort of if I could rationalize the relationship of financial statements to what it means to run a business and how those things, until I could put those together, I just couldn't get past that point. That took me, I can't even tell you how long it took me to deal with it.
Well, but that's why it's so important to have a support team, as you mentioned. Everybody cannot be an expert on everything. And, there's this, I don't know, stigma or something I think to a lot of entrepreneurs and leaders of, if I'm the leader, I have to remain tough the whole time and I can't ask for help and I can't show any weakness and I can't, and it's just so silly and it holds so many people back, because why take, 5 days to do something that if you just make a phone call or say to someone, I'm not sure how to do this, can you walk me through it, that you can do it in 5 minutes or 5 hours versus days. But we do, for some reason, put up those roadblocks ourselves and say, oh, we can't ask for help, we'll look weak, or I have to be the smartest person, so if I tell someone I don't know how to do that. So it's really important for that. You mentioned about service, and I know that you're really passionate about just people in general and building relationships. John Taffer, for anybody that watches Raise Bar Rescue, he has a fantastic book called Raise the Bar that I love. And it's about the restaurant business, but it applies, business is business, right? For the most part. But he talks about what we do in the service business is we sell customer reactions. And when you think about that for a minute, we sell customer reactions, and whatever your product is, whether it's automotive repair and service, whether it's cupcakes, whether it's a drink, whether it's vacations, that is the vehicle to which we obtain that reaction, right? And so his kind of litmus test or rule of thumb is, if he serves food at one of his establishments, if people are sitting at the table talking and, on their phone or whatever, and they put the plate down on the table, if everybody doesn't stop and look at that plate and say, wow, that he failed. And so, if you're not wowing your people, and that's both internal and external customers, you're failing. And I think we lose that piece too. If people are not complaining, we assume that they're happy, right? And that's not the case. And you really pride yourself in that customer reaction for both internal and external. Why is that such a driving force for you, the people part of it?
I think I've naturally like to challenge what goes through my head sometimes. I like seeing things from two sides of and I don't know why that would have happened. I think part of it is, it may be related to the fact that because I'm an immigrant, because I don't know if you know some of my history, but we fled Baghdad when I was 8 years old. And then we moved to Germany. We lived in Germany for 3 years, and then we came to the US in 75. I think having to go from Arabic to German, and then from German to English, and then going to different schools, and having to be that person that sort of walks into a room knowing that you're a foreigner in more ways than one, in language and in ethnicity, having to walk in and adapt to that, it's helped me to be able to see sort of how that looks. And if I may give you a business example to this. So some of us have shops in ethnic communities, diverse communities that once we were very, white, let's just say, right? So a lot of us don't realize this. And I have cover because I'm an immigrant. I'm going to say some things that you'll see that this is actually will prove itself if you actually practice what I'm about to tell you as a shop owner. So you have a customer coming in the door, be they maybe Eastern Indian or maybe Eastern European or what. If you come from a third world, bargaining is something you do. The prices aren't set. You go to the markets. I mean, there's meat hanging there. There's a butcher sitting there, and it's an open market, right? And everything is bartered, right? And you can go to Italy and Greece and see that. And so when I say third world, I mean just places where there's open markets. Well, if you have somebody coming into your place of business and your $799 service is answered with, well, that's too much. And you don't investigate that further. You don't say, well, how much is too much? Can you explain that to me? And then you realize that this person is looking for some kind of a discount, right? You could take the high road and say, well, my coach told me that discounting is not allowed. And so therefore I'm not going to do that. And so by saying to somebody, well, this is America and the price is the price and all that, now they walk away. And the reason they're walking away and never coming back is because they're seeing what they think is that in where I come from, my culture is that I barter. We reach a middle, or you help me understand why you can't, whatever. But the point is, if you don't barter with me, you discounted me as a person who is not bartering worthy. I'm not worthy of bartering with, and so they walk away and they never ever come back.
Oh wow!
And so
I never thought of that they would.
Well, I
almost like an insult.
It is. And so nobody realizes this is going on. And you don't realize that right there, you have some of the most loyal customers if you just engage them. And so how I would engage them, and again, because I know sort of what they're actually asking for, if you offer the discount and say to them, look, is what's standing here in our way, this $800, is what's standing in our way is a $20 discount or $40 discount. If I do this for you, will we go ahead and do it? And if the answer is yes, then the qualifier is, we'll do this because I want you to experience what we're all about beyond the price. But we'll do this one time as a good faith measure. And if you don't mind, with all due respect, our pricing is the pricing. We don't play games with pricing. So if we go ahead and do this today, Kim, if we take $50 off this bill and we go ahead and do this, will this be the last time that we're going to have to discuss this? And if the answer is yes, then we move forward with that. If the answer is no, that's a different situation altogether, which we don't even need to necessarily get into. But the fact of the matter is there's a cultural divide there, and we just walk right past each other, never even realize it. How many times does that happen in marriages? How many times does that happen in relationships at work with employees? Guys that don't know the value of being there on time and what that means to the business as well as the other employees. Maybe it's ordering parts from the vendor and doing side jobs. There was a thing on one of the other forums with it's okay with you to have an employee that's doing side work and ordering parts and paying for it in cash under the name of the business. To me, those are huge boundary red flags. And I'm amazed that people get into those things, but more amazingly, they're shocked that this is happening. They don't realize that this is a relationship-based thing that has to do with just not having proper boundaries set in relationships.
A lot of food for thought there. I'm kind of, my head is spinning. I never thought, I seriously still thinking about that could be perceived for some different cultures of that you're not respecting them because you're not willing to have that conversation. And so important when you think about, we talk about in sales in general, knowing somebody's buying personality and understanding what language do you speak to them in. There's all kinds of books on like love languages, right? And relationships. And there's even one now, the 5 love languages, they've translated it in the business workplace. And I forgot the title of that one, but it's the same author. And you have to get to know your people, right? And so that's your internal and external customers. And just like you said, with setting up the boundaries or anything else, what motivates them? What, if they don't know or understand why, coming in 10 minutes late every day is a big deal, that we can't just assume that they know that. And we have to dig deeper. And especially in today's world, and maybe they're coming in 10 minutes late every day because they have to take their children to the bus stop, or they have somebody at home that they're caring for and have to give medicine or whatever. We can't be any more like the world used to be, cut and dry. Nope, you better be here at 8 o'clock. Our hours are 8 to 5, or you can't work here, or whatever it is.
And
we have to listen, right?
And how many of our male shop owners, the Martians among this, and for those of us, I mean, I know you know this, but there's a book by John Gray called Men Are From Mars and Women Are From Venus.
Yes.
And how many fellow Martians still say, you come to work late on, all the time and all this other stuff. Well, it's not all the time, because if it was all the time, then the employee wouldn't say, well, I came to work on time Monday, remember? I know the other 364 days I was late, but that one time. So that's not so automatically now we have an argument, when in fact, all that you got to do is personalize it with I statements and start it off with, when you show up late, I feel like you don't value you don't value and respect the people that you work with, because this is our business. This isn't, again, it's just like, you came to work late and I don't appreciate it. And all these judgment things, and nobody is thinking about starting this off with, I feel, and I know feelings are difficult for guys, especially tough guys who work on cars. You don't want to use statements like that, but you can't argue with that, right? You can't argue with me saying, Kim, I feel like you're the smartest person in the, you're not going to argue with me over that, because that's my feelings. You're not going to deny right? But if I say, well, I know you're the smartest person in the world, you can deny that if you don't feel that way. Like that's the difference between, there was there's so much of this is in child rearing. There's an author named Chick Mormon, and he has a book called Response-Able Parenting. And he talks about the difference between praise and encouragement. And he says, praise is child comes over and says, hey, mom, what do you think about what I drew? And let's just say it's just spent, 5 minutes of time, whatever. If you look at this and say, well, this is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. Okay, I can take that. But the next time, if I come in and I spent half the time doing that, and it's also the most beautiful thing I've ever seen, I learn that your praise isn't worth anything, because it's not realistic. Because no matter what I do, it's the most beautiful thing you've ever seen. And it could be perfectly legitimate that this is the most, because after all, it's your child that has drawn this. But the child at that point in time realizes, you know what, this praise thing isn't worth anything. What does encouragement look like? Encouragement looks like, well, so mom, what do you think about this here? The encouragement is a question in response. And the question is, before I tell you what I think is, what do you think about it first? Could you tell me what you think about this? Well, I think I could have done a better job. Really? How so? Well, I could have probably colored this in and I went over the line here with the crayons red. Interesting. Okay. So what do you think you're going to do the next time to make it worthy of how you want it to be, right? We're encouraging them so it comes in from the inside, because from the outside, you have a praise junkie who's looking for a pat on the back at every time. Do we have
You mean how we give trophies to every person for doing everything?
Yeah,
Don't get me started on that soapbox.
Well, yeah. I mean, do we have any employees that spend 10 minutes working on a car and pretend that they just moved a mountain, right? Oh, I'm the greatest thing ever. Well, how about we get back to work? There's other 3 or 4 cars that we need to get to, right? And so if you have a praise junkie, that person has been trained that at every turn, you're the greatest thing ever and all this other stuff. And nobody can work around them. And you wonder why the hell you can't build a shop around this guy who says he can fix or anything and everything. And maybe he can, but the minute the praise stops, he feels unappreciated and he's gone. So it's not even about the money.
Definitely a lot of food for thought, and hopefully it's going to make a little bit of a shift for people. One final question before we sign off today, Bill. What is one unproductive habit that you've had that you have exchanged for a productive one?
Oh my God, Facebook. Facebook is just horribly, it's just a time-sucking thing. And the problem is you turn on this thing and you've got industry-related forums and I like my politics, but all the other nonsense, all the other garbage that's in there, how to turn that off, I don't know. I haven't figured that out, but I would love to know how somebody else is doing it. I don't have an answer for that.
All right. Well, I can tell you one of the steps that I got to do is take it off my phone, because my gosh, I'd go on there to look at something, a client put or whatever. And then the next thing I'm watching cats playing the pianos and a zebra singing whatever and everything else that comes in. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. A lot of information, a lot to, what's the popular saying now, a lot to unpack in this podcast.
Well, and hopefully if people are watching this is something they can't just go back to one, but and other podcasts, when you listen to something, maybe it's something that you don't agree with, go back to it a week later or a year later and just see if I hear it with it, just like a book, right? Like this poem just doesn't make any sense. And all of a sudden, one day you open it up, you're in the right frame of mind, and all of a sudden, oh my God, this makes sense. And it could be a poem, it could be a joke, it could be a formula. Something just doesn't resonate with me, and all of a sudden it opens up because you just let it simmer a little bit. Consider it, right? Ponder. Nothing wrong with pondering.
Pondering is fantastic. Well, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you, Kim.
Everybody,
best to everybody.
Stay safe, make good choices, and stay inspired. And I will see you next week. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Take care.